me now. Hello, everyone.
Good
Yeah,
So we're back
bemoaning,
with John.
How many times have you been on there, John?
Six? Cool. I think that he's put up
Well,
with us.
yeah, exactly.
Well,
I know.
me specifically.
Well, I didn't want to say.
John, people are saying on the street it's going to be a tremendous show. Do you want to confirm that?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Andrew, do you have to say something?
It's all that the paper's been on about.
Yeah.
It's like nothing to do with any
Not
sort of
the sun.
political
Sun.
movements or-
Access Hollywood are really looking forward to.
Oh, yeah. What's the big sort of journalistic magazine in that kind of like Hollywood Reporter?
Yeah, you've got the Hollywood
There's
Reporter.
variety.
still going?
There's variety. There's Hollywood Reporter. There used to be Premiere, which I used to collect religiously in the 80s and 90s, but that kind of folded.
What was the horror magazine?
Fangoria, which is still, I think that's still going. Somebody was
Believe
wearing
so.
a Fangoria T-shirt at the Fright Fest.
That's quite good. So we're doing the top 10 documentaries all time.
Yeah, we're doing my top documentaries.
That's all that matters, though.
Yeah.
That's all. That matters.
And we've split it into two. It's 5 straight documentaries and 5 music documentaries. And there's some interesting ones.
Are we going in any order? Or
Yeah, we're going in chronological order in reverse.
Okay.
Now, which would you like first? Would you like the top 5 documentaries or the top 5 music?
get the music ones out of the way.
Okay.
The music one's out of the way.
Because I'm not going to know anything about Go for it.
Again, these are 5 that I've sort of picked based on the criteria is they are movies that kind of are celebrations of music, but also have a bit of factual behind them. I mean, there are concert films out there. I mean, there's things like Kids Are All Right, which was a montage of Who clips. There's things like U2, Rattle and Hum, which split everybody in 1988 because it was at the time when Bono, U2 were sort of becoming big, but then they had a backlash because U2 were trying to celebrate. They were trying to explore American blues and stuff, and of course, U2 are not a blues band. U2 are a unique who played a certain sound. And they kind of, I mean, there's one of the most laughable moments is where during Silver and Gold, Bono says, Edge play the blues, and he's not playing the blues, he's playing a U2 single sound. There's things like Jonathan Demme's Stop Making Sense, which is the Talking Heads documentary, which again is a wonderful concept. And it just starts with David Byrne on a single stage, which is barren, singing Psycho Killer, and then they build the set as the concert goes. And it's really worth watching. There's things like there's all kinds of stuff. So these ones are what I pick as my top 5. So at number 5, we're going to talk about Quincy. Now this was a Netflix documentary which was released last year, and it's
Quincy Jones.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's a celebration of Quincy Jones.
Well, it's by his daughter, isn't it?
It's co-written and directed by his daughter Rashida, and it talks about his incredible career. So, you know, people sort of see him purely as the Michael Jackson producer on things like on Off the Wall, Thriller, and Bad. And in this documentary, what's interesting is I don't know whether it's because of all the Michael Jackson controversy, they actually decided they weren't going to do all that. They wanted to concentrate more on Quincy Jones because ultimately...
Do they refer to it at all?
They do refer to it, but not as much as you'd expect. Whereas back in the 80s, you could watch... 1982, 83, it was like the album. Yeah. I mean, it still is one of the albums of all time. But they don't have it in this documentary. So it's more about his work as a composer, as a writer. It's really great because they have, I think Dr. Dre, at the outset of it, Dr. Dre's doing a podcast with him. But he's an amazing figure. I mean, it's sort of a celebration of his life, his struggles to be accepted, the fact that he worked with... I think people like Burt Bacharach and stuff like that. And the documentary really is this very colourful example that actually is what Netflix do very, very well. I think Netflix kind of have been criticised recently because they're trying to branch out into because of the on-demand and stuff. They've kind of been, a lot of people are quite wary because of the fact that they're technically a streaming platform, but they want to be film distributors. They want to build also. So things like Quincy will turn up in the... on the big screen, but then of course they're streamed over, you know, the internet and stuff like that. So it's a great. I mean, you hear a certain record and you hear a certain record and you think, oh, so that's what he did, and it's like, yeah. So it has that kind of charm about it. And Quincy Jones, he's one of the most charming people. I mean, he has his family around and stuff. And the opening sequence shows you his home where he's got all these discs, and when you look around, you're thinking, Jesus, you
Yeah,
actually,
yeah,
think,
yeah.
and that to me is what I think is great about. I mean, he's a legend of producing. I mean, if you look at people like, for example, there are lots of other producers out there. Brian Eno, for example, Jimmy Iovine, Bob Clearmountain, and people who produce people like U2 and Simple Minds and Bryan Adams. I mean, Bob Clearmountain produced the Bryan Adams album Reckless. So, and, he produced, Quincy did the music for The Getaway, the Steve McQueen film.
Yeah?
Yeah. And he also produced The Color Purple with Steven Spielberg. And he did the music for The Color Purple.
He was the co-producer on that.
He was the co-producer.
Quite young.
Oh no, he was quite aged.
I suppose he's in his 70s now.
Yeah, but he actually, it was the one film that I think Spielberg did not have. It was a book. The Alice Walker book was exclusively a property of Quincy Jones, and then Spielberg took it over. I mean, there was a controversy at the 1986 Academy Awards because Out of Africa was the big winner. But Spielberg because for years before Schindler's List, Spielberg used to get nominated for a lot of stuff, and then he was actually snubbed. Oh. And the thing is, it got about 13 nominations and didn't win a damn thing, whereas Out of Africa won 7.
Right.
But there was kind of a concern because you could expect somebody like Spike Lee or say John Singleton when he was alive might have done The Color Purple, and it's a very simple book, and it even though it had a great cast, so. This is really what's a celebration of that. So do check it out. It's actually a fantastic thing. So that's my number 5.
Okay, good start.
My number 4 is a wonderful one called Standing in the Shadows of Motown. Now, this is about the Funk Brothers. Now, the Funk Brothers...
When did this come out?
This came out in 2002. This is part concert, but it's also a part interview and part reflection. This is if you ever get a chance, it's on DVD. It's about the Funk Brothers. Now, the Funk Brothers are the musicians who played on all the Motown tracks. So when you listen to things like, This Old Heart of Mine, or Reach Out, I'll Be There, or Baby Love.
I really want to go listen to like a Motown. Great,
Well, this is actually a fantastic example because it tells the story, but it also has interviews with some of the musicians who are still alive. And there's also some great concert performances like Joan Osborne. Remember One of Us, God is One of Us, and this Chaka Khan, and they sing like live versions of Reach Out and Heatwave. The performance by Joan Osborne singing Heatwave and What Becomes of the Broken Hearted, which is actually my favorite Motown track, is good. But there's also a great sequence where they go and visit the actual studios, and they actually break down how they create a Motown track. So they say, well, we had the rhythm here and we had the things here. And the great thing is you're actually watching those musicians play the music live, and you actually hear, as you watch them, you're actually thinking, so that's what that sound is.
Right, okay.
How they create that. And it's about arrangement, it's about orchestration, it's about, and turn it up. If you watch the movie and just turn it up on your plasma and get the sound out, it's just glorious, because I think the Ben Harper and Chaka Khan, Gerald Levert and Chaka Khan rendition of Ain't No Mountain High Enough, which is near the end of it, is just like really getting people on the ground. I saw it at the London Film Festival in 2002, and it's just a really great, really wonderful thing. I mean, it's an educational film as well, because at the beginning of the film, they sort of ask people, do you know about Motown? And then, of course, everybody misinterprets, goes, well... And they go, the Four Tops. And they say, yeah, but do you recognize the musicians who played on tracks?
Right.
And again, it's a celebration of that. So that's my number 4. Number 3, The Last Waltz.
Okay, yeah.
Now, this is Martin Scorsese's...
It's the band, isn't it?
Yeah, now, what this was the band played for 16 years from 1976.
So what band's this?
It's called The Band.
The band.
Oh, okay.
They're called The Band. And they were a Canadian band consisting of Robbie Robertson, Liv Van Helm, Rick Danko, Richie Manuel, and Garth Hudson. And they started out with Ronnie the Hawk Hawkins, and they played as backing band to Bob Dylan. Now, the concert, it was directed by Martin Scorsese. The original concert, the main concert, which took place in Thanksgiving in Winterland, which is an old ballroom in San Francisco, the original concert lasts about 5 hours. But the concert itself is about 2 hours. And what it is it sort of intercuts interviews. It's the whole musical journey of the band, and you have the actual band members talking about their things. I mean, the funniest thing is the very first gig they had, there was about 5 people in the room, and a fight started. And they have people like Eric Clapton on there, Joni Mitchell, Neil Diamond, and they play. And there's like and Bob Dylan turns up, Van Morrison. So all these musicians are like icons of the music business. And again, if you're looking for a way of actually getting into those bands in a big way and those artists, this is another great one. And it's intercut with interviews between, as I say, Martin Scorsese actually interviews the thing. So you don't normally suspect that Martin Scorsese is an interviewer, but he's also a very talky person, and then actually I can forgive him for this because he does know his stuff.
Why did he choose? Why would he have been the talking head in that?
Well, it was actually his thing. I mean, what it was how it came together was Jonathan Taplin, who was the band manager, came to him and said, would you be interested? Because he was working on New York at the time, which again was George Lucas's then wife Marcy was editing on it. And New York was like this. It had Robert De Niro and Liza Minnelli. Sort of went nowhere. But he came to him and said, would you be interested in doing the band filming it?
Yeah.
So they had about 32 cameras, and if you watch the DVD, there's actually a really interesting extra where they actually show how he staged it. So he put cameras in various ends, so how to shoot various angles and how various things going on. So and then because it was the last waltz, they wanted to get it done quickly. So it was one of those things where I think Scorsese was, at the time, he was sort of high on
everything,
and he almost died. But literally, this was a companion project it was doing for New York, and it's for me, it's really a great. I love it because it's a great concert, great music.
And do they utilise all those cameras? Do you know?
They do, yeah. And it's the way that it's staged. I think it's one of the best staged and best filmed concerts ever. They really get into the music in a big way, and then they also intercut it with sessions. There are certain sequences where they have people like Emmylou Harris and the Staples singers. I mean, Mavis Staples was actually at the Glastonbury this year, and then they have like performances like The Weight. If you saw Easy Rider recently, which was on TV, that's the track which they play over Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper and Jack Nicholson going along. It's one of the, and then there's a version from I think Evangeline and stuff. So they've taken like band track classics and they've put it on that anyway. So it's just a really great celebration.
So what's that called?
The Last Waltz.
The Last Waltz. Okay.
So number 2 is a relatively new one, and it's a film that I really do love. It's a film called Searching for Sugar Man.
Okay.
No, I'm the only person on the planet who haven't seen that.
Okay, so this is a wonderful. I mean, this actually made me go out and buy the actual music. Actually, the minute I saw it in an afternoon thing, and when HMV was off, I thought I've got to seek out that soundtrack.
Is HMV still going?
Yeah, no, it's gone.
Well,
it's FOP is the thing.
Hang on, what?
FOP. There's a FOP. It's FOPP. That's the HMV shop on Shaftesbury Avenue.
But HMV, there's
HMV.
no longer.
Well, it exists up north, but there's no branches in London. They closed down.
Are they all gone now?
No, I think there are still some available, but inexplicably there isn't one in London.
Yeah.
The one in Oxford Street actually is boarded up. They still have like the placards.
Oh, really? Okay.
Okay, so this is the story of a Detroit musician called Rodriguez, and he did this album, and then he sort of wasn't really big in America, but he found a following in South Africa, and it was weird. So this is the story of it, and he talks about his background and where he came from, because I think the documentary filmmakers were kind of keen to know whether he was still alive. But the music is fantastic, Sugar Man, and there's I think Pure Crucify My Love or something like that. But it's a soundtrack that I just grew to love, and there's a lot of different things, and it talks about when he went there and people were mobbing him. So it's kind of like so a genuine phenomenon. And again, what's really educational about it is that, and why I picked it like that, is because it's really nice to know about sometimes. I mean, The Last Waltz, for example, I saw on television in '82. BBC did a thing called Rock Week, and they showed Tommy and American Graffiti, No American Graffiti. They showed Maze live in New Orleans, which was, and we lapped up all these concert films, and they, it was a great opportunity to see these, because they were rarely
So
seen.
I'm just laughing.
I was trying to eat
subtly
my coffee
drink his-
subtly.
Oh, right.
For a
Okay.
straw, and I gave up.
Anyway.
But again, it's sort of really, and what was great about it is it actually heightened his reach back in America, and
Right.
America really liked it. So they then did concerts. It's sort of along the same way as like Buena Vista Social Club, the Rycuda one, with,
Yeah,
about the Puerto Rican or Cuban music.
Cuban, yeah.
Cuban musicians. And again, this is another of those documentaries that really does tap into that whole thing, and I love it for that reason. So that's my number 2. So what do you think my number 1 is?
I mean, there could be all sorts, couldn't they?
Is it an actual documentary?
It's
not
an
a
actual
mockumentary?
documentary.
Yeah.
It's an actual documentary.
Is it about a musician or is it a musical documentary?
Yeah.
It's a musical documentary.
Okay, I've got nothing then. I was going to say Elvis.
I mean, yeah, but there's all sorts, and I'm trying to think. You've got No Direction Home. You've got you could have either Marley, or you could have the Amy documentary, or there was the Bros after the Screaming Stops, or Kurt Cobain, or
that a long time ago.
the Rush documentary. That's quite good. Beyond the Life of
you've
Stage.
outdone
It's
us,
got,
John.
we're going back quite a while, but I'll give
Give
you
us a year or
I'll give you a major clue. It's celebrating an anniversary this year.
Oh no, I've got nothing.
Oh, it's what, Woodstock?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Look at that! Boom.
Okay.
What do I
so-
win?
Well, you win a.
you can have
well,
take another coaster
Well,
home.
you win an Oscar if you're a filmmaker and if you made it, because it was the 1970 Oscar winner for best documentary.
Oh blimey! Who directed this then?
Michael Wadley.
And what's he done?
Well, this is his party
that
piece.
is.
It was reissued in 1994 for the 25th anniversary. This to me is just an This is a movie you have to see on the big screen because it uses split screen, and it's like multiple ratios, and it's 3 hours. It's about 3 hours 30, 3 hours 30, 3 hours 40. And it features a legendary performance by Jimi Hendrix. What's great about it is that it's all live. It sort of encompasses right from the very start about how they built the Woodstock platform, because all it is a field in upstate New York. And then it shows you, there's split screens where they play the music, but they also show, at one point, they show how the thing's being built, and then they show the people arriving. And they've got aerial shots. They've got... and a series of concerts. The Who played there. Crosby, Stills and Nash played for the first time. That was after Graham Nash left the Hollies. So, and there's also questions about the legitimacy and how good those musicians play. Because a lot of the musicians afterwards said they hated a lot of what they played. The Grateful Dead, we said they were awful. But the real great thing about it is it's just a wonderful visual treat. Martin Scorsese was one of the editors on it, and it is on Blu-ray, and it's just a celebration. There's an intermission in, but instead of intermission, it says "into fucking mission." But there's some really great performances on there, and you have to keep your eyes on the screens because you have multiple angles and stuff like that. Okay. So it's so that's really it.
What's the sort of backdrop of it? Is it just following the event?
It's the actual event itself. It was actually they had so many cameras and they had to capture. Michael Wadley talks about it on the Blu-ray. There's several short documentaries about how they conceived it. But it just captures, I think, a moment in history so well. And I think for me, it is the best music documentary. It still is the best music documentary ever made because I don't think anybody had seen anything like it back in 1969.
Yeah, it's early.
There is a 35mm 6-track Dolby mix that I saw at the Shaftesbury Avenue when that was a single screen. And again, I was sitting right at the back. Right at the front, I saw somebody was lighting up a joint, I think, at the time.
Nice.
But it's, but again, it's a movie. If you ever get a chance and they do a retro screening at a cinema, then go and see it and try and see it on the biggest screen.
Was it Woodstock where they had the Hells Angels as security?
No, that was Altamont.
Was that the second? Supposed to be the second Woodstock?
That was Altamont was the infamous Altamont Speedway where Hell's Angels killed.
They killed something.
Yeah, that was
that the Rolling
That's the
Stones?
Rolling Stones
Yeah.
concert, which is, and they filmed that as "Give Me Shelter." I mean, the Rolling Stones, for example, they had several concerts. There was like the Shine a Light one, which Scorsese did. There was one in 1982, which Hal Ashby did, who did Coming Home, called "Let's Spend the Night Together." But a lot of these concert films often get criticized because they're kind of self-indulgent. I mean, the U2 Rattle and Home concert film kind of really ripped off U2 because they were trying to be pretentious and stuff. I mean, there's that really funny joke where Bono's at a concert and he says, "Every time I clap my hands, a child dies," and he goes, "Well, stop fucking clapping." But the thing about Woodstock is that in this time of artifice and in this time of the X Factor and Simon Cowell and everything else, and Stock Aitken Waterman, where there's a lot of fake, like, people are covered up by the technology, this is actually showing you that these musicians can genuinely play.
That's good.
And the thing about it is it's also about, they also intercut clips with some of the people in the right from the very beginning. There's a shopkeeper who's talks about, "I was there when this crowd really came. And the kids were wonderful. And when they see this in the moving pictures, they'll really see something." And you have guys, and then you have the people who organize it. At one point, there was going to be a film called Young Men with Unlimited Capital, which Charlie Sheen and Emilio Estevez were going to play the organizers, which was going to cover the actual, about how they raised the money for the Woodstock concert.
As a film.
Yeah. I mean, they tried to do a 50th anniversary of Woodstock recently, a 50th anniversary concert, but I think apparently there was a lot of the acts who wanted to play withdrew because there was concerns of one thing or another. There's a story going around. I read it in the press recently. But for me, that to me is my number one. Still is one of the greatest. It's a visual treat. I mean, it's truly cinematic. I mean, a lot of the other ones, for example, I like single cameras and tend to have very more simpler arrangements. But this one is purely because of the fact that, particularly during a Crosby, Stills and Nash song, Sweet Judy Blues, there's 3 cameras and they cut it together. And it's just a great celebration. Whether or not you like the artist, it depends. I mean, another thing is it also depends on whether you like the artist themselves.
Right.
And on the DVD, there's an extra disc which has extra performances.
So it's the 50th this year,
50th anniversary. June. It was. I think it took place in Bethel, New York, in June of 1960.
So it's not showing anywhere in London, and is it that?
It isn't. I mean, it's available on Blu-ray. I mean, there might well be. I think they have done a couple of They did a day of limited edition screenings in America. I know. I got an email about it, and that would have been great. But it does play from time to time on the BFI South Bank. I know it plays, but you can pick up a copy online. So yes, I recommend that.
That's not bad. So what year was that?
1969.
And when was Woodstock?
1969.
So when did the film come out then?
1970.
Oh, the next year it was out.
Yeah, next year. So
yeah, I think I'm going to watch Quincy, the Motown one, and the Woodstock one. So thank you for that, John.
Okay, so now we're moving on to my documentaries.
Mm-hmm.
Now the first one is. Forgive me for the fact that this has not been seen all that much, but it's a movie I'm going to big up and recommend. It's a movie I saw at the London Independent Film Festival earlier this year, and it's a film called Pluck.
Is this the one about how chickens are actually cleverer than we think?
No. It's about how. No,
there was one about.
You're thinking of Pluck.
This is actually about Nando's advertising in South Africa.
Oh, geez.
Okay.
So is this a new film?
It's a new film. It's just come out. I actually saw it at the London Independent Film Festival, and I met the filmmakers. But they're still. I don't know if they've got a distribution deal. But to me, it's a movie that should be seen.
Right.
What it is, it's about how Nando's advertising was used in South Africa pre and post apartheid. So
bloody hell, that's very specific.
It's a little controversial because Nando's have been a bit iffy about it. But there's some really funny things where they sort of take the piss out of people like Idi Amin, sort of eating the chickens and stuff like that. So, it really talks about.
As long as he's not eating people.
But it's a very educational film because it sort of talks about culture and the politics.
But what's the controversy with Nando's and
Well, because it's about how the advertising, because when you think of apartheid, you think of the censorship, you think of the limitation and stuff like that. And then there's some really interesting clips of what the advertising was about before apartheid. Okay. And then in post-apartheid, there's things like, there's one clip where there's a scene where there's an advert where there's a woman and she says, "I've got no chips," and of course it's her boobs her boobs are out like this and they can't see them. So it's a really nice. I think it's a very affectionate look at in terms of a historical document. I think it works really. I loved it, and but I think the filmmakers have been very. That they were kind of still struggling at the time, and I did say to them, "You've got to get that movie out and maybe submit it for Oscar consideration." But it's very much in the independent sector at the moment. It hasn't had too many screenings. I think Australia, and there was a couple of screenings in Cape Town and Johannesburg. There was a festival last year, the year before, which was in Johannesburg and Cape Town. So that's good.
So what about in London? Is that out now then?
No, I don't know any more than that.
It's got to search for it.
It's out there at the moment. I think you can look at online at the actual thing. But the reason I just feel that it's something that I just loved it and I laughed right all the way through. And I just hope it'll be a tragedy if it doesn't get.
Where did you see it?
At the London Independent Film Festival.
Okay, yeah.
And it was one of my picks of the festival, and I think it won an award on the last day and stuff.
So that's Pluck, Pluck.
Yeah, Pluck, and you can actually see if you go online, you can watch the trailer and it'll give you an idea of it. So it's good.
That's all right.
So number 4. Now this is It's difficult to know whether I could describe this as a documentary because it's more of a montage of images, and it is.
Hang on, no. Oh God, it's not. Is it 2 words?
No.
Oh no, go on then.
It's a single word.
Is this Koyaanisqatsi?
Yes.
Oh no, I
find
think
it very hard to get that. But.
So Koyaanisqatsi is I think it's a montage of images. It's a sort of thing that if you watch the IMAX, and what it is, it's high-speed photography, and it's the word itself is basically Hopi Indian for life out of balance, and Francis Ford Coppola sort of championed it back in 1982. Don't even have to explain it. You just have to watch it. And it's backed up by a wonderful score by Philip Glass. And part of the reason why the film is so iconic is because of that score. I mean, Philip Glass, like Michael Nyman and the Peter Greenaway stuff and the piano, it's one of those soundtracks that you might have heard in passing, but you'll say, "Oh, so that's what it's from."
Right.
So it's series. It just goes all round. There's things like, it's things like cityscapes and even simple images like a mother and her daughter in a TV room talking. And there's things like people going into the tubes. There's mountains. There's like high-speed camera work of New York and cars going along.
And it's just stills.
It's just a series of montages and stuff. Okay. And they made 2 other films. One was called Powakatsi, and the other one was called Nikakatsi. And it was part of a trilogy, which I think you can get on a box set or something. But it's just...
Yeah, what do you like about it? What did you enjoy?
It's just a visual treat.
Oh, okay.
It's just... I would safely say that it just has those kinds of... You know how movies, sometimes you'll watch a movie and you may not think about the narrative, but you remember the images.
Right, okay, yeah.
Because the images will always...
La Jetée, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
You heard the photographs of the nuclear war?
Yeah.
Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Where it's just stills, photograph.
But that's the key thing, is like when we... how do we define a movie? Do we define it by the performances? Do we define it by the camera work? Without a camera, it's not a movie. It's a radio podcast. Yeah. But I just think it's one of those that when Barry Norman played a clip of it, it was always like, so the very final thing is he'd always play a clip of a movie that was coming and goes. Right. I'd like to draw your attention to this clip, of this new movie called Koyaanisqatsi. And the word, what is the word? This word? And I saw it on Channel 4. I remember staying up late until about 1 o'clock in the morning watching it, and I'm thinking, what the fuck was that? Because it also subverts the definition of a documentary.
Yeah.
Because it's not really good. There's no talking heads. There's no kind of narration of it. You don't get like Brian Blade saying, "And we are in the mountains and we are looking at this high speed thing Gordon's alive. You know, it's but it. But
Has Brian Blessed done any documentary? That would be amazing.
I think he has.
He
You
probably,
know,
probably about mountains.
Yeah, but
How long is it for? How long does it run for?
it runs for about 90 minutes.
Oh, God.
It's a very,
Yeah.
but it's. I would just put it on a really. It's kind of the sort of thing that you have, if you have a party at home, you can sort of turn the volume off and just put the images on.
Yeah.
And say, you know, somebody said, "Oh, what's that?" Oh,
And
that's
it keeps you watching it, does it, for that long?
It depends really. You know, you watch it as a source of fascination, but it's one of these Marmite movies. You'll either love it for the images, or you'll hate. Or you watch about 10 minutes and you'll think, "Fuck." I think sometimes people do that, but I think as a visual treat, I think it's iconic for that reason, and it has such a wonderfully memorable title, and it makes you research it and stuff. And
You're saying take a punt on that.
take a punt on that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that's my number 4. Now my number 3, I actually still think this is one of his best documentaries, and it's Michael Moore's Roger and Me. So
which one's this now?
okay, so before he was bush bashing in things like Fahrenheit 9/11, he was exploring like Columbine. He did this really wonderful documentary about the plight of Flint, Michigan, and General Motors, and the fact that there were several auto plants closing down. So the socio-economic decline of a town, and it's the story of his determination to get an interview with Roger E. Smith.
Who is who?
He's the CEO. He was the then CEO of General Motors.
Okay.
But it also, what's wonderful about it is it explores the plight and the downturn of a city, at a town that, you know, how, I mean, if you look at Newcastle, for example, the shipyards, or suppose in Birmingham with the Ford thing, or even in Dagenham in, you know, the Ford Motor Company, and how that closed down. So there's very much a lot of this stuff in here that people can identify with. But I feel that Michael Moore has become a little bit arrogant as of late with his approach, because I think with things like
Just in general.
with things like Fahrenheit 9/11 and stuff, he's just kind of, I think when you stop, there's no balance in terms of what it is. You want to have, you know,
Right, yeah.
But he has sort of acknowledged that. I've seen him do interviews and stuff. He says, "I'm not interested in balance. I'm interested in, this is my message."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And I think also that's a very dangerous. That to me is a very dangerous.
So
thing.
in this film, he's more
in this
journalistic.
film, it's kind of like you see him more as a, you know, kind of like they think he's a bit of an arsehole anyway. But the truth of the matter is that it's the fact that what makes it interesting. It is about how this event affects the town. I mean, there's one very disturbing sequence where there's a woman who she bashes a rabbit's head literally on camera, and you know, like, and she actually sells the meat. But it's such a shocking. Because of course it's, you know, why she's done it is because of what's happened at the factory. And it sort of is. It's quite heartbreaking because you're dealing with people who, again, the fact that factory was, or those factories were their life. And I feel that I just wish that Michael Moore would explore that kind of element a bit more. I think there was, I think the political climate. I mean, I suppose I think somebody's already done it with Brexit, for example. And again, it's
there was one. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty, but there was one where it was just going around. I think it was an Australian filmmaker, and he was going around just England, just interviewing people. It was very it was just simple black and white. Just interviewing different people about Brexit and why they voted this way or that, and it was division. You know, he was sort of looking at the division that it created. Whereas normally, where we've had votes and things, you kind of, you know, people sort of go, okay, well, I lost this time. Never mind.
But it's a bit more deep now.
But it's that's the thing is that I think for a documentary to be effective, I think you have to have two sides.
Yes, right.
I feel that Michael Moore's kind of.
He's playing to an audience.
He's trying to play to the crowd, and he's trying to do something which is, you know, I'm not disputing his ability as a filmmaker, but I feel that when you have an agenda, you've also got to respect, but not everybody's. You know, it's not a case of you can't please everybody all the time, but you have to say, well, look, hang on a minute. It's like, would you have Brexit and Remainers? I mean, it's like the problem is I think everybody. There's a leap of faith and there's an unknown here now, because as we get towards like the October 31st deadline, whatever it is, people are kind of, I think both sides are scared, you know, both sides are kind of, you know, but it will be interesting to see what it's better to wait and see what happens. We're in this zone. We can't, the democratic votes is, it was, this kind of thing. Like, what I find a bit concerning and disconcerting about what's happening with Brexit is, I think, look, it was a simple yes or no. You were given a ballot paper, you went into the polling booth, and at the end of the day, just respect it. The politicians in this country, they should have had a bit more. Oh, they were like sport kids. They were like, hang on a minute, we're trying to do it. I'm not going to go any further on it, but getting back to this is what I think is really nice about it. I think there's balance in Roger and Me, whereas I don't feel it's in things like Fahrenheit.
What sort of years is this?
This is 1989.
So this is before all the most well-known ones he's done.
Okay, so that was
that was his big breakout, wasn't it? I think that was the thing that put him on the map, as it were.
Okay, so my number 2. Now, this is probably one of my all-time greatest favourite documentaries, and it's When We Were Kings.
Oh,
the Ali one,
which is the Ali, and again, what I think is so fantastic about this is the mix of music, but it also shows Ali at his most iconic. The way that he taunts George Foreman.
Was there anybody known who filmed this?
It's a guy called Leon Gast, and it took him 22 years to complete. I just read that. I read that online. That from 1974, it was like he was spending time financing it and stuff. It was co-produced by Taylor Hackford, who did Officer and a Gentleman and stuff like that. But it won the Academy Award in 1997 for Best...
It went into the cinema, didn't it?
It went into the cinema. It was a polygram release, and it had people like Norman Mailer, who wrote a book called The Fight, which is about the rumble in the jungle. And there's performances by James Brown, and he talks about, the famous sequence, he goes, Ali, Bomaye, Ali, which is... kill him. And it celebrates he goes, I'll go and see my African brothers, and there's scenes of him walking. And it's just one of those things that, it's such an iconic moment because, again, there's no censorship. There's no, Ali was one of those that I think he's the greatest sportsman of the 20th century, but without question. There are great sportsmen, but nobody was as vocal as Ali. Pele, for example, could play football. Could he vocalize very well? Bobby Moore. You could look at all the great sportsmen in the world, but Ali was like a one-man. He was somebody who defined his sport. He defined his culture. He defined his generation. People who've never heard of him will be told about it because when Billy Crystal, there's a great clip online of Billy Crystal talking about his friendship of at the Louisville funeral. It's a wonderful clip. It's about 20 minutes, but he talks about Ali's thing in his memories of doing it and about how he did it, and he talks about his like impression of Howard Cosell and Ali. But it's just one of those really great. What was interesting on the speech, he said, what was interesting about when Ali died, there were no wars, no terrorism. We just took a breath and sighed. And it's just one of those great, we are, we can't believe he's gone.
And this whole film was about the rumble in
this
the
is
jungle,
this is
George
really
Foreman.
about a specific thing because of course it was when he came back after because he got banned from boxing, but it's the whole thing. It's covered a little bit in the Michael Mann film Ali with Will Smith, but this is actually the real thing, and I just think it's another truly cinematic film.
Yeah, there's a lot of the editing in there is fantastic. The way it's all put together, because there's a lot to put together with the concert and the getting over there and the politics of it all, and then the actual boxing match at the end.
But it's a great thing. Okay, so we're now to my number 1. Now, what do you think my number 1 is?
Well, it's got to be better than that. So, is it a well-known worldwide?
It's a well-known film.
Am I going to know it? Is it that
well? Just have a champion, see what you think, okay? Because in some ways, the clue is in what we've already talked about, and I have talked about, but there's a connection with what I've already talked about earlier on. So,
what year are we going?
Well, it was 1995.
What type of industry is it?
It's film.
No, it's about filmmaking. Is it about?
It's about filmmaking.
Oh God, better than.
Oh, is it Hearts of Darkness?
No. That was kind of just outside my top 5. But no, it is quite an interest. I think it's a fantastic.
Go on then. What?
Well, it's actually a personal journey with Martin Scorsese through American movies.
Oh, okay.
Now, this was something he collaborated on with the BFI. Now, it's a 3-part documentary, 225 minutes. But it's...
Is that what it's called?
It's called. And it really partly demonstrates Scorsese's wonderfully encyclopedic knowledge of what filmmaking is about. But it talks about the definition of what a director is. And if you love film clips, you are going to love this one. But it's also how he contextualizes the films, because I was looking online because when I was putting it together, I was looking online, and there's immense clips on there and about what he's talking about, and it also reflects his own personal journey, because he grew up in the Catholic Church, and there's, if you read the father book, Scorsese on Scorsese, he talks about where he grew up. And
where's he from? New York.
He's from New York, and his whole background, where he learned where he grew up in Tribeca and Little Italy, and the kind of themes that you see in a lot of his films. So, for example, when you watch like Goodfellas or Raging Bull or Taxi Driver, they are very much an extension of his own personality, and they're the right thing, because he talks about religion. I mean, he often goes on about Jewel in the Sun with Gregory Peck and stuff like that, and Jennifer Jones, and his whole, and about the solution to watching films if you're an addict is more films. And what I thought I loved about it was the fact that he'd introduced me to a whole group of filmmakers like Douglas Sirk and Samuel Fuller.
Right, okay.
Like Samuel Fuller did a great movie called Shock Corridor, which is about a journalist who goes undercover in a mental hospital to try and get to the bottom of a story, but ends up going mad himself. So it's kind of a forerunner of Milos Forman's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, when McMurphy goes into the hospital because he wants to claim insanity and then goes insane. But it explores so much more. There's so many clips. Now, it's not a pastiche of, we're going to watch a bunch of blockbusters. It's not like some films, for example, which film documentaries tend to sort of suck up to the filmmakers. This one doesn't. What it does do is it contextualizes what the filmmakers are about. So, I was sort of stimulated and inspired, and if you go online and look, if you go onto Wikipedia, for example, and see, because somebody has actually taken their time to write all this list, there's a whole filmography of films that you might want to explore. And you think, I won't watch that. And there's a whole load of them. And I think, that'd be good. So that to me is that's why I pick it as my favorite documentary, because it's a documentary about cinema, and it's about improving your knowledge. So it educates, it informs, it broadens your knowledge, and who better to do it than learn about it from Martin Scorsese?
And what year is that? That's just
1995.
Oh, 95.
Yeah.
So where did you watch that?
I watched it on DVD. There's
DVD.
I sort of bought it, and I thought I'll sit down and watch it, and as I say, I think, am I going to watch it in parts? Then I ended up watching the whole lot.
Is it over 2 hours?
It's nearly 4 hours.
I was going to say, yeah, probably.
Nearly 4 hours.
Okay. Oh, there you go. So there's learned a lot there. There's a few there I'm definitely going to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Any wild card ones that just nearly didn't make it in? What was the one you just said?
Yeah, I mean the Hearts of Darkness one is actually.
But what is that? Why do I know that name?
Well, it's basically it's Eleanor Coppola, who's Francis Coppola's wife, and it's her official documentary on the making of Apocalypse Now.
Oh, okay, right.
So, but there's actually a book called Hearts of Darkness, which was the journal, the actual journal, and. Basically, there's some really great clips of people like Lawrence Fishburne and Martin Sheen in the jungle. One of the most fascinating...
Wasn't he like 16 years old? I think he got permission from his parents or something, didn't he?
I mean, I learnt about an interesting thing. Walter Merck came over for a Cinema Gem event recently, and I asked him about the opening of Apocalypse Now. And the story goes that when they were editing Apocalypse Now, they were looking for how to open the film. And Francis Coppola came across this can, and he said, "What's in there?" He goes, "Oh, it's nothing. It's just an afterthought." And it was the opening shot of the jungle. And what they did, he says, "I'd like you to intercut this with the music of The Doors by the end." and then intercut it with the scene of Martin Sheen on the bed. Now, all that blood, apparently, when he's done it, that's actually real because apparently Martin Sheen was high on drugs at the time.
Yeah, I heard they don't use dose.
Yeah. But the whole thing is it as a really interesting filmmaking thing. That's another of those. Another one is the Empire of Dreams Star Wars documentary, the 2.5-hour one, which was the extra on the DVD, which was a really great exploration of how they filmed that. I wish they would have shown a bit more of the making of it, but they've just done, if you read the J.W. Rinsler book, that gives you a lot of really interesting things. Funny enough, when I was going through, I was looking at I sort of typed in documentaries just sort of see what it was, and I need to watch a lot more of them because I've probably seen a lot in passing, but I probably have to go over it.
Do you ever see a documentary called The King of Kong, The Fistful of Quarters, about the competition for King Kong, the arcade game?
Oh, blimey!
Yeah, if you ever watch this, one of the best documentaries I've ever seen because I've
heard of it. Yeah,
it's like, forget Star Wars. This is a real story of good and evil. Like, there's one sort of mildly autistic guy who's very nice, and there's this other guy who thinks he's Muhammad Ali. Like, he just beats everyone. And it's funny because years later, which is like a few years ago now, it turned out that he was cheating. And he was fighting it off. But he was so famous in the industry.
Okay, well, there are actually two that I would also recommend. One of them is Morgan Spurlock's Super Size Me, which is about the guy who actually...
the McDonald's.
Yeah, he wanted to go there. But the one that I'm interested in seeing is about the scandal of the E.T. cartridge. The Atari video game. The Atari... Okay, so this is the story. The Atari VCS, which was kind of the PlayStation for the 80s. Yeah. I can say I'm proud owner. We own one. Yeah, it's cartridges, Space Invaders.
So yours isn't one of the ones in the landfill then? The ET?
No, I never bought... Well, to be honest with you, did you? I sort of saw it, and it was one of those games I didn't buy. I mean, I know I had friends. There was a Raiders of the Lost Ark game. There was even a Texas Chainsaw Massacre game.
No, was there?
Seriously, yeah. Wizard Video did.
Is that what you're playing, Leatherface?
Probably,
you're trying
yes.
to get away from him.
But the problem was with the limitations of the graphics. I mean, they were really bad. We had Defender. We had like the Defender game, which was really good because in the arcade there was like several buttons, but it was like but what they did was they actually did a very clever thing because all you had was a joystick and a button, but you could actually go around, and the way they did it was very clever, and the actual graphics were really good. Okay, E.T., the Atari, they did a deal with Universal to do an E.T. video game, but they actually didn't sell enough. So basically, there were millions of cartridges, and they dumped it in the desert. So what had happened was a filmmaker actually decided to go and track them down, and they actually found them in the desert.
Really?
So the whole story is it's about that whole scandal. The fact that they got rid of them. Another one that I'd recommend is the Stanley Kubrick A Life in Pictures. If you get a chance before September the 17th, go to the Stanley Kubrick exhibition.
I booked my tickets.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. I went there earlier this year. It is a fantastic... If you ever want to get a sense of it, also a big up to anybody. If you haven't been, do go. Do not miss out on this before it goes away. It's a wonderful... it's like an exploration, but it has all those genuine props. You can take photographs, just don't use flash.
Mm-hmm.
But there's the actual phallic sculpture from A Clockwork Orange.
I mean, who doesn't want that?
It includes it also includes the filing system for one of the unproduced Kubrick things, the Aryan Papers. It's got the actual clapperboards like Clockwork Orange. It's got HAL in there. It's got...
I think got the Star Child, the model.
It's got the Star Child model. There's actually some of the actual physical models like the Discovery in there. Oh, there's a mint in one corner. They've got one of the sets from 2001. It's got the Overlook Maze in there.
I like that.
There's cool. Spartacus. There's the early stuff from Lolita and stuff.
What's in there from Spartacus?
There's a whole load of costumes and stuff.
Oh, okay.
There's the editing table he had, and they've also included on some of the TV displays. They've got the making of The Shining. They've got the making of Full Metal Jacket, so you can watch a lot of those clips which are available. It's got like Full Metal Jackets in there. there's some of the illustrations from the unproduced version of Artificial Intelligence, which Kubrick was going to do next after Eyes Wide Shut, which Spielberg then went on to do. But it shows you some of the really interesting things that they did. Now, it would have been interesting to see what Kubrick's version would have been like, because I think it would have been a little less sentimental. But there's things like like trains going through big mouths, like miniature golf and stuff. The Eyes Wide Shut stuff's there as well, so there's a lot of interesting stuff. They've got some of the designs for the French version of Clockwork Orange, like Orange Mécanique and stuff.
Okay.
So you'll need about 2 hours to go in there.
Has it got any footage from the moon landing that you filmed?
Oh no, but it's
well, that was a documentary.
but it genuinely, but again, it's just a don't miss out. It's just fantastic.
No, I
What
bet
was
my
it?
ticket.
I saw your you've been to see the Dark Crystal thing.
Yeah, they had a Dark
That was
Crystal
one of
at
my
the
favourite
BFI.
films.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Go. It's
So what
free.
is it? It's
So
a
they've
one-off-
done a new. So Netflix have done a new series.
Is it an anniversary?
No, not
Oh.
particularly. It's just called Agent, because they've been talking about doing a sequel, because it was one of those films that pretty much bombed on release,
Really?
and wasn't particularly well received critically, but has grown in stature. And I think it's
Yeah.
one of those ones where people who watched it at the time loved it. Either they shared it with their kids. It's one that's on. It has been in heavy rotation on TV.
Yeah,
It's
I
one of
remember
those
seeing
things
it.
that-
I've seen it, and it's
Quite
I think it's
dark.
things like it's also there are certain films of the 80s. The Thing is one of them, and Blade Runner and Dark Crystal, and also Princess Bride. The
Yeah.
Princess Bride is another one again, which I discovered recently, which I think is incredible.
Was that Andre the Giant? That
Yeah, and like you killed my
Inconceivable.
family,
Or the
prepare to
Sicilian.
die.
one?
My favourite bit in that is where Wallace Shawn tries to swap the drink with
Yeah.
Carry On. He goes,
Yeah,
"You done," and then he falls over. But it's also got it's got Buttercup played by Robin Wright, and who's glorious. And there's As You Wish, and it's just. But with the Dark Crystal, for example, or Labyrinth is another one.
That was another film
you
I
know,
really liked.
But the Dark Crystal, I think what's great is it's actually, the puppetry and trying to do a complete world. And I think that's the benefit of what's happened now with home entertainment, is that a movie that sometimes bombs in the States. But I think it's unfortunate. Timing, we've already talked previously about the fact that it came out 2 weeks after E.T. and people weren't ready for it. But I would have preferred it, as I say. I think Carpenter said at the time he wanted it released in the autumn. I think it would have done really well.
Yeah.
So who
but
did the puppetry for that?
Puppetry for
Winston, was it?
No, Rob Bottin.
Rob
All right,
Bottin
thing.
did the stuff for thing, but Jim Henson.
Jim Henson, that's what I
Yeah,
meant.
I mean, I was actually funny enough. I was reading the latest Starburst about it, and apparently Lou Grade, Jim Henson spent every ounce of money to get the rights back for the Dark Crystal.
Oh, okay.
And then the funny thing is, it did pretty well. It cost about 15 million, but it actually made about 45 million. So it was
Made money.
still. It was still.
So what was the event? Netflix doing something?
So basically, Netflix have done a prequel TV series, and it's all with puppets and everything else. It's not CGI, because there's been talk about doing. There was talk of a sequel for a long, long time.
Yeah.
That never materialised. What they did instead was a comic book,
Right.
and I think that did really well. And so they were like, okay, so people really are genuinely quite, sort of thirsty, as it were, for Dark Crystal stuff. So they just decided to do it. Obviously Netflix have the money.
Right. So they are doing it, or it's out?
It's out.
or
It's
what?
out. It
Oh,
came
right.
out yesterday. I think.
I was actually at the BFI yesterday, and there's a display in the reception, and they've got there's a video game, and there's a
Yeah, that's what I mean. If you go upstairs, did you go upstairs? to
I
the
didn't. I
exhibition?
just had a quick
Ah,
look.
they've got all the puppets
I
up
know,
there. You
yeah.
can do your voiceover.
But another one. It's the latest example of a cult classic that has actually sort of found its audience, and with the advent. I mean, Tron is another one. Tron Legacy. That was again a movie that which sort of expanded the universe. I mean, there was rumors of doing a sequel to Tron Legacy, but I think Disney have kind of felt, well, it's
Oh, bloody Disney.
Or they'll reboot it probably.
yeah. But it depends. I mean, I thought it was a really great. I thought it was a really great treat and stuff.
When's the Terminator film coming out?
It's out this summer. They've just released the latest trailer.
That looks better.
So it's
now.
not coming out in August.
Yeah.
It's not in this.
But they've kind of. I'm kind of in two minds, because I just feel, well, it'd be interesting to see as the official sequel to T2, and it's also I'm kind of
Oh, hang on. What'd you say there? This is sequel.
to T2.
So they're ignoring
What they've done is
Terminator 3.
what they've done with Halloween last year. They've basically ignored all the sequels.
Right.
From what they've done is they've ignored all the sequels from 1981's Halloween. if we're talking about Halloween,
Right, yeah.
they've ignored all the sequels from 1981 through to whatever it was, and they just did a direct sequel.
Right,
to
okay, yeah, I think
So what they've done with Terminator Dark Fate is they've actually done, what they've said is sod Terminator Rise of the Machines, Terminator Salvation, Terminator Genesis.
I'm happy with that.
They've got rid of, because I think Cameron was so unhappy with what's happened with his property.
Right.
He just said, well, I'm going to produce this. And it's directed by the guy who did Deadpool.
So
So,
it's not Cameron, this.
no, he's producing. But like with Alita Battle Angel, he's done the same again. He's
Right,
handed over directorial duties.
Yeah.
Because he's been mega busy, because I think he's retiring. I think he's doing all these Avatar sequels, and that's it.
Right. And what's this director done before?
Deadpool.
Deadpool.
Oh, Deadpool.
So it's so as it stands, it's I mean, I saw the latest trailer and I think it sort of captures what essentially is it. But I'm hoping that it will be a better film than the trailer, because the trailer kind of has a lot of.
It just looks like Terminator Genesis.
Yeah.
Right? The
Really?
early trailers. Yeah. The most recent one, I was like, okay, I'm starting to feel a little more.
So what makes
assured.
you think it's a sequel? Like, what? Where do you?
No, it's the official sequel
Oh,
to
the sequel.
Well, 'cause
Terminator Judgment
Linda
Day.
Hamilton's alive for one thing.
Yeah.
Sarah Connor's alive because they killed her off for
I've just
Terminator
lost-
3.
Yeah, I've lost it.
So
Okay.
but I think dependent it'll probably be a test bed, because fans are very wary. After Genesis, everybody was kind of felt that because they tried to combine cute with brutal.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the biggest thing about the first two films was that, again, you had a very ruthless killing machine.
Yeah,
Whereas
I want the Terminator to be a comedian. Just let it go.
Well, but that was the whole thing, because in Arnold Schwarzenegger's Total Recall biography, he said at one point he wanted to do a scene where the Terminator goes into a fridge and drinks Dr. Pepper, and he said, "Look, it's a Terminator, Arnold. It can't drink." So it's going to be. We'll see what happens.
Was it you that told me in the original Terminator, where he gets into the car and drives it off?
Yeah.
He sees a woman reverse first and hits something and then drives off, and they were going to use that where he gets in, but it's too comedic, where he then copies her, gets in the car and reverses it to smash into something before he drives off. And they said, no, it might be too funny.
No, there is actually a scene where the police officer bumps off the Terminator, and then the Terminator grabs the car and then sort of bashes the guy's head and takes the car, so he pursues Reese and Sarah. I don't recall that. I mean,
the only thing I didn't like with Terminator 1, this is stuck with just this one bit in it that annoys me, was where the car Reese and the chick, what's her name?
Sarah Connor.
Yeah, they're in the car and they have that crash when they get them both, and the Terminator crashes and the police turn up and he disappears. He goes and fixes himself.
Yeah, well, that's.
I think, well, why didn't he just get straight out and kill them?
I think because the idea is his arm is busted.
No, the robot
hold a
would
gun.
go. No, his other hand was working where he could manipulate his eye and all that.
Yeah, but he fixes his arm first, doesn't he? I don't know.
Yeah, but they were right there in the car, in the burning car. And he had time
well, that's
to
a little bit like, why don't they just shoot
you
James
can,
Bond?
yeah, but you can. But the thing about it is that that's just I think one of the things is at the time you didn't think about it. You just thought this is, you look at the suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous.
I mean, okay, here's one thing. Here's one thing. Okay. In Halloween, right? The opening of the film. Michael Myers' sister, Judith Myers, gets into bed with a boyfriend, right? So they go, let's go upstairs, okay? And Michael's outside and he's looking around. Lights go off, right? They have the quickest sex ever.
Really?
Between the time that he gets from the doorway into the house,
it's all over.
it's all over. Okay, and here's another one.
That's impersonally reasonable to me.
Okay, we're on a roll now. Fast and Furious 6.
Maybe he went up on a stair lift.
Okay, here's another thing. Fast and Furious 6, right?
Well, I ain't got
Car chase through central London.
Yeah.
Okay, now they've done this really wonderful sequence, right? How fast do you think those cars are going?
Are they flying around?
They're flying around, okay? How long is the embankment? It's
Yeah.
less than a mile. And they're driving at
right,
170
yeah.
miles an hour. And they're driving along. And I'm thinking, you're not going to survive. It's like that. So it's kind of like don't get me wrong. It's
you let
clever,
certain things go.
But again, this is trickery of it. But again, that's what I'm saying. It's like at the time when you watch films, it's like you don't think about it. You're all, as long you're concentrating on the story, you're caring about a lot of things. We see a lot of movies that are, it's like when you look at Star Wars, the original version, you think there's a lot of stuff now and you kind of nitpick. But because we're more savvy visually about it,
Mm-hmm.
we don't, we feel
No, we are getting bloody cynical. I told you, I said a friend of mine before was complaining about the Planet of the Apes. He said you can still tell they're apes, like it's a CGI. And I was like, fucking hell, let it go. What do you fucking want?
But that also brings home the actual credibility of the original films. When John Chambers' makeup was done, you know, I think what's great about the original Planet of the Apes is the actual makeup is superb. I mean, the fact that they were working on they did some tests, and the fact that, you know, when they did people like Roddy McDowall and Maurice Evans and Kim Hunter, and, you know, it's great because it's a wonderful. I think it's wonderful the fact that they, you know, those are genuinely terrifying. You saw them as. You know, these genuine people who really were taking over the planet. But also, there's thematically, it's the scariness of it because it deals with the issue of race, the context of race and stuff like that, and acceptance and stuff like that. But the makeup is what makes it work. I kind of feel sometimes, I mean, the Tim Burton version actually is more faithful to Pierre Boulle's original novel, Monkey Planet. You know, the ending is actually like that because they've done it. But I still feel that the original version... I mean, it still pisses me off that every single DVD cover gives away the bloody shock.
Yeah.
What is it? I can't remember.
Well, it's basically, okay, spoiler alert, but basically what it is at the end of the film, right, I'm sorry if you haven't seen it, whatever. At the end of the film, Charlton Heston and Linda Harrison are on a horse, right?
Yeah.
They're walking.
Oh, I know what you mean.
You know,
right, yeah.
And then he goes out and basically...
Yeah, you're right. Why do that?
And it's just crazy. It's like, look, why the film's so effective, and I actually think why it works a lot. I mean, I think I read the book, and I think that's okay, but because it's a Rod Serling co-written thing, because he did the Twilight Zone, I think it works a lot better.
Oh, right, yes. He did that as well.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's just So
which came first? No, of course, Twilight must have come first.
Twilight Zone was actually 1959 to 1960.
And what did he do in Planet of the Apes?
He co-wrote the script.
Oh, he co-wrote.
He co-wrote the adapted script with a guy.
So he did go on to do stuff then.
But he co-wrote the script with a guy called Michael Wilson, which is not to be confused with the Michael Wilson of the James Bond films.
Yeah.
But again, that's another thing. It's like, you know, I've got a copy of the Planet of the Apes box set, which is the 5 films. And again, those films are they are really interesting in terms of, you know, everything from Beneath the Planet of the Apes and Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. For my money, is the best sequel because it actually shows the apes rebelling a bit like the updated version. Which I have to say, the updated Planet of the Apes are superb.
Yeah.
The very Rise of the Planet of the Apes is just a real great celebration.
Yeah, you can't fault them.
You know, I love that climactic sequence on the bridge, and Caesar goes no, and I also like the fact when Tom Felton he goes, "Get your hands off me, you damn dirty ape."
Yeah. Who filmed all these? The Planet of the Apes, the recent ones.
I think
They're
first
well done.
Rupert Wyatt was the director on the first one.
Oh,
and I think the director of Cloverfield did the second one.
Yeah, it's
really?
it's somebody else Miller, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it T.J. Miller?
T.J. Miller.
Yeah.
But
they do all feel the same. Like it feels like they're all joined very well.
Yeah. You don't. It's not.
But it's But I think it's one of the cleverest reboots because the way what I liked about the recent ones was Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Actually, it was a direct. You know, each of them had a really interesting visual style, and the very first one, it was like a real nice trilogy and it wrapped it up. But I think the very first one, I just thought, well, this is actually a really great. This is a perfect example of how to reboot a series.
Yeah.
It's about how to tell decent stories, and it's about the fact. I mean, Andy Serkis, I think, also has to be given credit because he's, you know, his motion capture thing and what he's done to sort of move the art of motion capture and physical. You know, and actually doing physical reality and going to zoos and explore how apes interact.
Yeah.
And there's, you know, and the great thing is I love the fact when the gorilla is it Bright Eyes leaps onto the helicopter.
Yeah.
And you have that kind of thing where, and that is a real celebration of what you can do with physical action and CGI action.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And also as well, when it opens, you have and I love the fact when they have Rise of the Planet of the Apes, it just shows the title and then goes straight into the thing and then shows, you know, and then cuts out and then, you know, John Lithgow's heartbreaking performance as the person with the thing and the fact that the drug, you know, that wonderful scene where he throws, you know, like is it the EC12 or whatever?
Something like that, yeah.
And that scene where you know, and it's just and I also love that sequence where they climb out of the zoo and they're going into San Francisco and then all of a sudden it's like the the way that they sort of show the imagery of the apes in there anyway. I mean, funny enough, I watched Beneath the Planet of the Apes, the original sequel, recently, and it's actually a lot simpler. It was not as epic as that. They actually had only one very simple set in it, which was the underground discovery, which is with the bomb. And I forgot that, because I actually thought, this is the funny thing, because I saw it about 40 years ago when it was on TV, and I was like, wow, I don't remember, and it was quite
a bleak ending.
It was a bleak ending, but it was what struck me was the fact that it didn't, because I often see how they stage things and how you budget a film and what it is, but it's such a great. It has a real shocking thing where they lift their masks to reveal deformed things, and it celebrates that, and then Escape from the Planet of the Apes brings Caesar and Zira back to modern day San Francisco. And then that leads into Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, and then you have Battle for the Planet of the Apes. But each of them have have virtues of their own, and I think it's still one of the best iconic things. I mean, it spawned a TV series as well, with Rod Taylor.
Yeah.
And then there wasn't anything until the Tim Burton one, which is an honourable failure.
Oh yeah,
but it had its moments. I think it
was just. Overall, it's just disappointing was what it was, because you thought, like, oh, brilliant, Tim Burton. This was him, still when he wasn't just doing CGI.
It reminds me of the Batman and Robin with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Where you go, just forget that film. But
there's something quite funny about Batman.
But the biggest problem with Batman and Robin was, I think it had too many villains, and it had too much. It was too colourful. I think it kind of.
Family referred it to like watching the Power Rangers. That's what it was like.
Well, Batman Forever, I thought, was actually a really good. The third film was really good because it had, the Robin story was in there, and I like the fact that you had. I mean, it has one of my favourite lines. One of my favourite lines in Batman Forever is when the acid and stuff, and they get on thing, and Robin says, "Holy rusted metal, Batman." He goes, "Yeah, but the metal's rusted," and I've
holes in it.
But again, it was like the and I think Two-Face and the Riddler. I think Jim Carrey's excellence as the Riddler. But again, this is where with like Batman and Robin, I think it became a little too. I would say it sort of became a little bit too of an uneven thing, and I think the actual budget and the fact that Schwarzenegger wanted his cut of it.
My best part of that film was the CGI tear they had to put on Schwarzenegger when he cried. It looks so out of place. You just can't do it.
But I mean, Christopher Nolan has done a really great job of actually returning it to.
Talking of Schwarzenegger and documentaries, so have you must have seen Pumping Iron?
Yeah.
So the Franco Columbo in there.
Yeah.
He died the other night. Sad. Schwarzenegger's best mate.
But that's another one which I think is great, because again, it's a celebration of Schwarzenegger before he became a star. But
just the whole industry, the bodybuilding. There was nothing before.
Well, George Butler, who produced that, and again, that was the start off point for his career as a filmmaker. Because after
what did he go on? Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about Schwarzenegger. I mean, after that, he did a film called Stay Hungry with Jeff Bridges and Sally Field.
Yeah.
And again, he got a Golden Globe for Best Newcomer.
I don't know how.
Best Newcomer.
Oh, it was Best Newcomer.
Best Newcomer.
Okay.
And then he went on to do, because he actually played a bodybuilder in that. And then, of course, it wasn't until, he kind of stalled a bit with the Hercules Goes to New York, where he was
dubbed,
badly dubbed.
He tried to buy them, didn't he?
Yeah.
He tried to buy them before he went into politics.
But then when he did, of course, he went on to do Conan the Barbarian. And again, he was in his book Total Recall. He talks about the conflicts he had about making Conan more of a family-friendly thing, because he said,
"Yeah, right. This is my problem with him. I haven't got many problems with him, but this is my problem." So I listened to the book, and he says, like, no, Conan's he's not a comedic thing. He's not this. He's not that. But they just watered down the film so much. So he's saying this to them at the time. You're going to ruin it by putting all this stuff in there. But then he did exactly the same thing with Terminator. He turned it from a bloody robot into a stand-up comedian. I thought, well, you learned nothing. You've sold your soul just like them. You get to that age, and then people just sell their bloody soul. So that's him getting old.
Get more money when you get the 12 age.
Yeah, so all that stuff he said about Conan. What about Terminator 5? What happened there? What the bloody love story? And
I haven't seen that one.
I don't bother for that. But talking to George Butler, did he go on to do anything after Pump 9?
I think that was his main thing.
That was
we were talking earlier about Michael Wadley. I mean, this is what happens with some filmmakers. They will do one particular film, and it's because they will maybe it's because they want to. They work so hard on that particular film, and it's like with Leon Gass with When We Were Kings. But
you can watch. There's the making of the Pumping Iron that came out. I think it was the 25th anniversary,
Yeah.
and I watched that, and it's really good. And it talks about Schwarzenegger. I realised why Schwarzenegger was doing it, because I thought he's got to be too busy to do that, but he's in it quite a lot. And I think it was before he ran for politics. It was around that time, and it was basically he was doing it to sort of counteract all the things that were in it. So he started calling it a docu-movie suddenly and saying how fake it was. And the bit at the end when he smokes the weed, he didn't actually inhale it. And I thought, oh, you son of a bitch.
Is that the one where he's always talking about like how like lifting weights is like
sex, orgasm. Yeah. And he goes through that and says, oh, well, of course it wasn't. I didn't really mean that. And he keeps calling it a docu-movie. Go, just leave it alone. Don't ruin it just because you want to polish
yourself.
Is that
the one where he
it?
goes to Brazil and he's just touching up all these women on the dance floor and it's really hot and
I
they
don't
keep trying to
remember
make him stop doing
well,
it.
but I think in some ways that's the biggest issue you have sometimes, is that you never know what's going to happen with these things. It's kind of like with, I think everybody, I suppose a lot of these stars get that big moment when it happens. So,
Well, I think they get publicists involved and say, right, we've
Yeah.
got to clean up all this.
Yeah.
But the making of the documentary Pumping Iron is very good, actually, with George Butler, because he talks about the fact they ran out of money halfway through. One of the people that was in it, there was another storyline that was in it, which Arnold's supposed to be training somebody, and he dropped out, but he let them keep the money to keep funding it. And then they had to do some artistic thing about bodybuilding in a museum where the bodybuilders would come down and they talk about the history of the body to fund finishing it off. But there was just a small bit in there where George Butler, I just thought, he's a good filmmaker, where they're on the stage and they're doing a small competition about some amateur bodybuilders. And the guy that goes up to win, he said, you can watch me run behind the cameraman. And I grabbed the cameraman who's pointing on the winner, and he said he turns it round to one of the losers. And he said, and he's just like, his face is dropped, and then they just follow him back down to the stairs
It's a bit mean.
and talk to him. But then he goes on about, I'm doing it for my family, and they miss me, and I've all this time. And I thought, it's good. You see him run behind and just turn the camera to the one guy.
Get the tears.
Yeah, and they just follow him
Tears
down
sell.
and let him.
but that's also sometimes people when they try and do a pseudo documentary. I mean, Christopher Guest, when he does like things like This Is Spinal Tap, I think that's the thing, is they will always. They're very clever about that, because they'll take a specific element and they'll say, okay, well, let's do the documentary, but then that's why they're highly effective. Like turning the volume up to 11 and stuff. But
I think there should be more mockumentaries out on the.
The other
definitely room for more
well,
mockumentaries to be produced.
One of my favourites, if you want to talk about mockumentaries,
I do.
One of my favourites is Drop Dead Gorgeous with Kirsten Dunst and Kirstie Alley. It's about the pageant. It's about it's like it's like the bitchiness behind it, and and it's also, I think Kirstie Alley just plays this like stage mom, and it's just a very funny, because it goes all the way to this pageant that they have.
You're talking about the dog pageant mockumentary.
No, that's Best in Show.
That's Best in Show. This was Drop Dead Gorgeous. This
Got
is
2 left feet.
This is about the but yeah, there's a lot of this. I'm gonna have to sit down. What I'm gonna do is probably tonight. I'm gonna go when I go.
The next show, top 10 mockumentaries.
Yeah, top 10 mockumentaries. All good.
Yeah, well, we've got the horror one coming up anyway.
You've got to watch The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters. You've got to watch it. It's fantastic. So it's one of them things that just existed and they caught it on camera.
Yeah.
And it's about the King Kong.
I know. I'm trying to think of ones that I would recommend.
Weren't you something to do with a music documentary or something?
Yeah, I've been working on one forever. So
yeah, what was it?
It's about Cozy Powell, but we've been doing it forever, man. It's just so.
So you didn't finish it?
No, it's still got loads of. I've been.
Funny enough, here's another big plug. I was at the Pro Actors Summer Party the other week, and I met one of the producers of the new Last Action Hero documentary.
Okay.
This is actually a really good one.
What's the Last Action Hero?
Well, you remember the this is one, talking of documentaries, the one that I gotta recommend, and I'm gonna add this to my list, is Electric Boogaloo, the Canon Films documentary.
Okay, so this is
about Canon Films. It is a wonderful. It was released recently. This is actually one of the best documentaries about filmmaking. And it's about the Golden Globalist brothers, and it's got reflections from all the people who worked on Canon Films over the years. So everybody from Toby Hooper to Michael Dudikoff. So films like Missing in Action.
Did they do the Masters of the Universe film?
Yes, they did the Masters of the Universe.
Where they're
film.
switching the lights off during the final battle,
Yeah,
isn't it?
but again, that's another one that I should have added to it. But that's a great one. But this new documentary, from what I've heard from him, is the actual. I think it's about rights. They're trying to sort of make sure that the rights are secured that before they can do everything. Because you've got people like Shane Black, you've got Stan Furstenberg who did the American Ninja films. I think if they pull it off, I think if they can get it released, it's going to be brilliant because it's all about the second division B movie heroes.
Okay.
So everything.
Right, yeah.
So if you
I was going
think,
to say all the films you were mentioning.
well, Cynthia Rothrock, who was the
yeah.
martial arts thing, I think she was actually featured in it. And from what I gather, when they found out who was already on it, people like Shane Black decided to get involved. I only heard roughly a few things about it, but the producer was telling me some really interesting stories about it. So again, that's another one that I'd recommend because, again, the canon story is like, I think there was a famous joke in the 80s where somebody said to me, a billionaire father had 3 sons, and he says, he asked his first son, he goes, "What do you want?" He goes, I want a fleet of cars. So he bought him the whole fleet of Rolls Royces. The second one person said, he goes, what would you like? He goes, I'd like a restaurant. He goes, okay. So he bought him a whole franchise of McDonald's and Burger Kings. He goes to the third one, what would you like? He goes, like a cowboy outfit. He goes, so he bought him Cannon Group.
That's pretty good.
And he's, said, it's like, what's the difference between, I'm trying to think of what there was another joke I was trying to say. I'll forget that.
Okay. Right. Well, that was successful.
What's your favourite documentary? Yeah.
My one.
Yeah. Yes.
Is
it the King of Kong one?
That's second.
Yeah.
Hang on, let me think. But no, yeah, I know the first one. This is the American movie.
Which one?
It's about the filmmaker Mark Borchardt making films, and he's got no money. I think he's in Illinois or something like that.
Oh, okay.
It's sort of the genesis of me doing everything, like the pilot ourselves.
He's not the one that does the hands Manos the hands face. Not that.
No, it's not that.
Oh, okay. Fine.
It's America. It's about a guy who's got no money in
like
the late 80s, and he's basically I don't want to be rude, but it's like a bit of a hick, and he's an alcoholic, and he's like,
what is a hick?
It's like a redneck.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm getting very specific. But yeah, it's about he's got no money, nobody around him that wants to make films, and he's like this auteur.
Yeah.
Like he's a really smart guy, but he's been alcoholic all his life, and he comes to one last hurrah to make a film. He's got no money to make, so he makes a second film, which is cheaper to fund the next one. But it's just about he has to wrangle everyone around him, from his mum to everyone to be, and nobody's interested, and it just watches it play out. And it's like the King of Kong. It's just they caught this one bloke at this one time making this one film.
Though, isn't it?
It's the best documentary, I reckon. To me, there's that documentary, and then everything else, the American movie.
Fair enough.
So there's that's a couple of scenes I pounced from what we're doing directly
as
an homage to that.
We're going to get a cease and desist letter.
Yeah, yeah. No, they didn't make any money, so they got no backing. We've probably got more power than they have, to be fair.
Oh God, they must be bad.
But yeah, John, another great show.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll tell you what. While you're here,
yeah, just wanted to plug the next one of the upcoming documentaries. As I think we mentioned, just to mention, that I was just at the 20th anniversary of Fright Fest.
Mm.
And that's a nice little plug and lead into what we're going to be doing next, which is the horror podcast.
now this is what we've been building up to. This is where I kick in. So
is horror your thing then?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Okay, so
mainly 80s.
So will that be top 10 or top 20?
This is actually one that I'm really looking forward to because I actually it's one I'm very comfortable with. So what we're going to be doing for the horror podcast.
Oh, he's decided already.
Nope.
Producer on the show now.
No.
Go for it.
So I'm just going to tell you, I already know what it is. What I'm going to be revealing is my top 10 horror films of all time.
Mm-hmm.
But also I'm going to do a second list, which is of honorable mentions. Now, these are movies that I would not put in the top 10, but they are movies that I've loved over the years. Now, we're talking about over 30 years of horror watching on DVD, Blu-ray, and film.
An ITV on a Saturday night.
But actually, what was nice was just going back to what Fright Fest was we had a goodie bag, which just
Yeah. Oh.
Oh, he's been showing this.
This was the goodie bag that.
Oh, that's quite a cool goodie bag, actually.
Go to YouTube, you can see
marked,
it.
I say 20 bloody years.
I'm trying to work out all the...
20 bloody years.
Yeah.
That's good.
I'll work out who this lady is on the right
The
bottom.
lady on the right is Suspiria, I think.
Okay, and then the little doll?
The little doll, I think, is Chucky. I think that's
Is it?
Yeah, I didn't think it
Yeah.
looked like Chucky.
Because that was the only thing that came to mind, but I thought, that doesn't
Yeah.
quite...
It's the
'cause
baby
rest
out
you
of
can-
That's
Total
Old Boy,
Recall.
That's Audition, and that's American Real World.
Yeah.
But funny enough, they in the goodie bag, I got a limited edition 3-disc set of Dawn of the Dead.
Oh, okay.
Which apparently is very much sort of. I'm keeping hold of it now because apparently it's much sought after because they had about for the weekend pass holders they had about 400 copies, so they handed those out.
What do you mean you're keeping hold of it? Was it not given to you?
No,
Yeah,
it was
but
I'm keeping hold of it now.
Not opening it.
Right.
No, I'm keeping hold of it, but it features the thing about that version is it features 3 versions. It features the international cut, the director's cut, and the rarely seen Argento cut. And there's like documentaries on there. So there's and it also
So, what, Dario Argento did a cut of Dawn of the Dead?
yeah, because he co-produced it with George Romero.
Oh, okay.
Which apparently the version it's like it contains more gore.
Surprisingly for an
Yeah.
Argento.
but that's basically what we're going to be doing with the horror
Yeah.
podcast because it's
So it'll be an extravagant horror
we'll be in
extravaganza.
a
This is-
post
thi-
it chapter
this-
2
this will
world.
be I think I'm going to be seeing I think I'm waiting on a confirmation for the preview of it chapter 2.
Okay.
I think I'm waiting on that.
Yeah, I did think that first one was so good. And it
I
kind
haven't seen either of them yet, or the original.
of... the original is worth it for Tim Curry. Otherwise, it's a bit dated. I think it's...
What was his
Well,
name?
the,
Penny
um,
Farthing.
Pennywise.
But the
Penny
but
farthing.
all I'll say
Off the
about it
Buskell,
chapter 2 is the original is I think it's the most perfect rendition of a Stephen King world. I think it just captures what I've read in the books, for example. I think I think King's writing is I love Stephen King's writing, and I think some films work better than others. I think Carrie works better as a film than a book. I think Salem's Lot works better as the 2-part film. I think my favourite adaptations of a King novel, I think, probably are The Dead Zone and Carrie.
Yeah.
But my point is although I didn't feel it was as scary as it could be, and I still think the scariest clown ever was the one at Poltergeist.
Oh, yeah, under the...
yeah.
You know, which I think I still love that bit at the end where the little Robbie gets bloody pulled under by and he's being strangled by the thing, and then he gets and then basically like Heather O'Rourke sort of sees it, and the kid's being pulled under. But no,
Right, so that's the horror. We'll keep that for another time. I've got some party stocking fillers for your party bag to go along.
oh, okay.
As you're the new, you are the official Violucci podcast for a film review. You've been awarded 4 of our official Violucci podcast quality coasters.
Thank you.
Look at
£3 each. Go easy on them.
Oh, brilliant!
So there you go.
so
So
much.
you can do what you want with them.
Oh no, that's
They
fantastic.
could make good door stops.
that. Yeah.
You can jam
Well,
them.
I've got mine
ac-
stacked up.
Actually, no, these will be good because it also means that I'll at least have a coffee mat for my coffee when I'm at home. So.
There you go. Oh, just to remind you of us.
Just the
Always-
speaking of the horror.
Well, John, thank you very much for coming on, and we'll see you again sometime around Halloween.
pleasure.
And I may
Yeah.
or may not be dressed up.
Oh, God, he's going to be dressed. He's definitely going to be dressed up.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Cheers,
Thank
John.
you. Bye. Cheers. Thank you.